This is where the masks come off and the real stories take the stage. This isn't about sugarcoating life. It's raw, unfiltered, and unapologetically real. We dive into the struggles, the breakthroughs, and the transformations that shape us. Viewer discretion is advised. Some stories are raw and may provoke strong emotions. Here, we don't shy away from the hard stuff. Every story is a reminder that no matter how dark it gets, the light is always waiting to break through. This is the Lit Show where truth meets transformation. Today I have with me Kayla, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her story. Hey, Kayla.
Hey, just a little bit about me going from this time going back. I've got 3 years of recovery so far. But growing up, I didn't really know what recovery was or anything about it. So, um, I'll think back to like some of the younger moments I've had. I grew up in a small town in Rockwell, North Carolina. With my mom, my dad, and my older sister. Um, we lived off a dirt road in a little trailer. My dad was a diesel mechanic. My mom worked at some convenience stores and gas stations growing up. Um, yeah, life seemed kind of normal. What was my normal though? Because my dad also struggled with alcoholism. Um, like there had been times, he was like I remember him being that like playful kind of alcohol, like drunk type before he would pass out. Um, but when he would like drink and wake back up, he was a different person. He was most of the time mean towards my mom, not really towards my sister and I, but just like towards her, and you can hear him fighting and yelling from bedrooms. Um, but with that being said, growing up, we didn't have my sister and I didn't have a lot of friends over, and I think that kind of put a strain on us, not really knowing why until later in life. We kind of started connecting the pieces. Um, there wasn't a whole lot like I love my parents both, but like there could have like I don't remember us doing anything like like going out and about. We didn't do like amusement parks and stuff like other people in my school had done and took vacations and stuff just simply because they were trying to make ends meet. Um, but I think with that, like, come that need for attention.
Mm-hmm.
So I was searching for good or bad attention, just whatever I could get. So probably after fifth grade is when I started trying, like, getting in trouble at school. Um, like looking back, I know it was that need for attention. It was just trying to. I really don't even know, but I started fitting in with the bad kids at school. By the age of 12, I was already smoking cigarettes and sneaking them out of my dad's cigarette packs when he would be passed out. I knew where he kept his cartons uh, of Winston Selects. Rough, rough cigarettes. It would sneak and smoke them. Was already dabbling in smoking weed. Didn't even really get the concept of what cycle was already beginning. At 12. Um, but going into this, I think it was like eighth grade. Um, I believe it was eighth grade. I got into I'd say a verbal altercation with another student, and needless to say, like the sheriffs were involved. They come out to my house, and like I said, my dad was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde after drinking and passing out and then waking back up. There was times that like we thought he was gonna break his neck from like the way he would fall asleep on the couch. It was just it was it was bad. But this time he woke up after this fight, and the cops come out to the house. But he thought my mom had called the sheriffs on him, so he come out to the back door cussing, yelling at the sheriff, and ultimately they ended up taking him to jail for that 24, 48 hour drunk hold, whatever you're gonna call it. So my mom, she had had it. She had had enough of the drinking at this point. It was just getting worse over time. Like he wasn't going to the store just buying a couple 40s or a case of beer. He was going and buying like what the store was getting delivered to him because my mom worked at the gas station, so she knew the boss, and it was this whole thing. So it was pretty excessive. So she got tired of it, and we moved back up to Massachusetts, where I was originally born, with her family up there. I remember moving at the beginning of the school year, and was just like, great, here we go, like 13, gotta start. It's just awkward making friends at any age, but bouncing around from school is not fun. So yeah, again, I found myself trying to fit in to places where I probably shouldn't have fit in. And I was just missing home. I missed that sense of like that little normal piece of the family that was always what was my normal, just wanted stuff to go back to the way they were. So I tried staying with my mom so she wouldn't be alone, because I was that mama's girl. My sister was more daddy's girl, and I was always with my mom playing Barbies or something while she was folding clothes or cooking. Just kind of staying by her side. So I was like, I'm not ever gonna leave your side. We're in this together. But like, I was just missing, missing Rockwell, missing my friends out there. And finally, around April of 2003, I believe, she finally agreed to let me go home, because she had thought my dad had slowed up drinking. He had said he was doing meetings and all kinds of other things. So I was like, okay, so if I can do this and go back home and convince my mom like he's better, maybe she'll come back. Maybe my family can get back together again. My sister had already been living down there, and she didn't stay in Massachusetts too long before she left. But when I got home, I realized just how bad things had gotten. He didn't stop or slow down, my dad. Like, if anything, it got worse. I remember my mom and dad were big NASCAR fans, little country town kind of the deal. Like, everybody liked NASCAR. So this was back when Dale Earnhardt Jr. was pretty big into racing, and all the Budweiser cans and decals had his stuff on it. So my mom would collect them, and he was drinking those beers that had been up on the shelf for years.
Oh, wow.
He was poking holes in the bottom of them, drinking it out, setting it back on the counter or on the shelf to where maybe we wouldn't notice. And I didn't really notice until after his passing that it got this bad. But going back to when I moved in, like, he wasn't making us do anything. If anything, he was letting us smoke weed. My sister got to drink and smoke weed and hang out with her friends. So school was the last thing on our minds, with that, with not going to school and being, 13, 14 years old, they pick up on it, and DSS eventually gets called. And, at this time, it's a similar situation. My dad thought, this was my mom's doing, because she wasn't coming back. She didn't want no part of the drinking anymore. So,
and drinking can make you feel paranoid too. So he's probably always on guard.
Yep. He always had that sense like somebody else was doing something towards him, when in reality it was his actions. But I think, knowing what I know now, I think it's more just that addiction mentality, like, just playing a huge role in it. So one of the last arguments I ever had with my dad was when this happened. He thought my mom had called. He was arguing with her over the phone. And, prior to this, I don't remember a whole lot when I was real little about this, but my dad had made suicide attempts before, with like the hose in the gas or the exhaust pipe scenario and stuff. So I'd heard tales of it, but I didn't. I was still trying to find my way in life. I didn't know. And I didn't know about mental health. I didn't know about addiction. So me and my dad pursued to have this argument, when the whole DSS thing come about. And, some of the last words I had with my dad were like arguing, like, all I wanted to do is have my family back, and all you got to do is quit drinking. I thought it was that simple. And he was like, well, I should just kill myself if this gets, if this makes it all better. And I was like, dude, that's not it. But if that's what you feel like you need to do, then I don't know what to tell you. Then you need to do it. If that's how you feel, like, if you feel there's no way out, then that's your only option, then whatever. So my dad proceeds to leave that night, and like, I didn't realize I'd never see him again. I didn't realize I'd never get to talk to him again. But there's been a lot of work to make sure I've forgave myself for some stuff. But I know now that there was just more darker rooted problems that I didn't know about being a 13, 14-year-old girl. Um, so later the next morning, that's when two sheriffs had come back to the house to pick me back up, brought me to the school to meet up with my son. And I just knew something was off. When they came to pick me up. I was like, this is about my dad. And they're like, well, is there something you want to tell us about your dad or anything? I was like, well, he didn't come home last night. Did you guys pick him up? Like, did he get in a wreck? Like, what happened, because just knowing my dad and the way he was, I just thought he was mad and probably went somewhere and was passed out or got into a wreck and he was at the hospital. That's where my brain went. So we ended up going to my sister's high school, and it just kept getting weirder and weirder after that. Like, walking into her school's counselor's office, my sister sitting there in the room. There was the principal there. They had my mom on speakerphone. It was this whole scene of like, this is more than just, my dad being in a wreck or being arrested. And then they tell us, your dad was found at his place of work, dead of a self-inflicted gunshot wound to his head. And like in those moments, it's like in a movie where you just kind of hear the ringing in your ears, and like things start. I think that's when the numb out phase started happening in my body. Like I was like, this isn't real, Then like questions start, This was just 2 days before my birthday.
Wow.
He was found May 1st, and my birthday's May 3rd. So that was not to be selfish, but that was a shell shock in itself. Like, why weren't we enough? Like, why weren't we enough for you to stop drinking? Why wasn't our love enough? I had all these questions as a kid, not fully understanding the deeper roots of something that I would probably later face in my life. And boy, after that, it's kind of over for me for a while.
So was your mom, was she, did she come back to where your dad's house was, or?
No, she stayed gone. So when I come back,
so they made you go to where she was at.
Yeah. After we received the news, they put us on a plane and within 24 hours to go back to Massachusetts because we were two minors, me and my sister.
Wow.
So we had to travel back up north, and that's where my whole family's from. My entire family lives in Massachusetts and New Hampshire and all that, so we had to get on a plane to go back.
So you guys couldn't pack or anything? You just went straight to your mom?
Yeah, we had like overnight stuff.
Right.
But we had to pack up and go because we didn't have no family down here to really put us in. And, with the DSS case already getting called, it was just something we had to get on board with. But, yeah.
So did your mom end up coming back down to handle your dad's funeral stuff or what?
Yeah, we did all the service in Massachusetts. Yep. It's kind of a fog now. And I would tell people like I was picking out urns and stuff on my birthday, but it's such a fog from the time when he passed till when we had his service and his graveside memorial and all that, to where that whole like 2 weeks was a shell shock. But we eventually came back just because of our house and stuff like that. And then like we wanted to be there. Mom wasn't sure, but she did what she was thinking was best for her girls, and she finally came back down with us after everything.
Wow. What's the age difference between you and your sister?
So I am 35 and it's terrible. I want to believe my sister's 38, I think. I think I'm right on that.
So when you were 14 is when your dad had committed suicide, and then your sister would have been 17?
She was probably
almost
more 16. Yeah, okay, 16, 17, something. Yeah.
So she wasn't old enough to...
Yeah, it was the same thing, but like at this point I become selfish in what all I was wrapping myself up in. I probably didn't see how my mom and sister were grieving through some stuff,
Do you think that you struggled with relationships because of your father and your relationship?
Oh, most definitely. Yeah. Yeah, especially learning later about abandonment issues and stuff because of that. I always thought like, well, I mean, he didn't abandon us, but it's a form of it, you know.
Right.
But yeah, definitely. Shortly after my dad had passed, I had got with my kid's father, and it was the same, not the same scenario, but he reminded me of my dad, where he like mechanic stuff, you know, and Charlie would all like hunting and fishing, that kind of thing. And like the coolest thing about it, or I thought at the time, was like he was my best friend's brother. Like, thought this was cool, like become part of the family and all that. But shortly after I had, or right before I had started dating them, they lost their dad through a pretty tragic house building accident.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
so you guys had something to like relate.
Yeah, but you know, Charlie went through his own mental stuff with all that. You know, his upbringing was a little rough with his mom being hooked on drugs and dad just trying. It was like the opposite story of my family. So and I just thought it was really cool to kind of date my best friend's brother. But later, there were some issues with it, of course, you know. But by the time I was almost 18 when I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. And by this point, you know, I've already been introduced to pills, drinking, smoking weed. At this point, too, I was probably 16 when I realized I was addicted to pain pills pretty bad. And then...
Were you just popping them or were you snorting them?
I was snorting them, yeah. I can't say I ever had taken any kind of narcotics the way it was prescribed on a bottle as far as by mouth and swallowing them. They always ended up... It was terrible.
So do you think your father had any pill usage, or do you think it was just mainly drinking?
His was drinking. Okay. From an early age, he drank a lot. But I think in the back of my mind, I seen what alcohol did, and I was one of those people like, oh, I'm not going to ever drink like that. But yeah. Ended up doing everything else. But, yeah.
So drinking definitely wasn't your thing?
No, not in the beginning. No, I mean, I wasn't like somebody who would never drink, but it wasn't like a daily occurrence.
And when you got pregnant, did you sober up or clean up your act?
With my daughter, I did. When I got pregnant with Wyatt, as my addiction kind of, like, because I think going from like my dad's death and then jumping in with like the relationship with Charlie and having a baby, I had no time to process it, or I didn't give myself the time. So like I was so wrapped up in that, and then like mine and Charlie's relationship wasn't perfect. And after Raiden, like pain pill usage got more and more. It started out with like hydrocodones and Percocets, and then when Opanas had hit the streets, it grabbed me hard. And it wasn't long after that till black tar heroin had come in the picture. And that's when there wasn't really no looking back. Like, even when thinking of wanting to stop and all that, it was just, you'd be so dope sick and whatever, you wouldn't. It was either going from, well, I won't shoot up today, but I'm going to snort a bunch of pills today, or, you know, jumping back over. Like, it was always back and forth between those two things.
And Charlie would participate with you?
Yeah.
Would you say that he was the one that used and introduced it to you, or do you think you...
It's friends. It was the group we hung around, I would say. I don't... Even with the beginning of my drug addiction, I don't really try to say it was this one person's fault. It was that fitting in again. It was being at a party and someone brought out a plate with some lines chopped up on it. And, oh, what is that? What's some pain pills? You want to try it? And I'm like, I didn't want to be that person to say no.
Yeah.
So there I was with trying it. And I remember the first time I tried a hydrocodone at a friend's house, I woke up with my head in the toilet puking, like swearing I would never do this again. Like, oh my goodness, what's happening here? I didn't even remember that night. But like, then the next party happened, and it just kept going. And that was all before 16. you know, when I go into like after Raiden was born, it was at home use. You know, like I wasn't going out and about to parties and stuff, but I was using at home. You know, not really living in the greatest neighborhoods, living in that trailer park that you think you'd see on TV and stuff, like just that rundown trailer park. And you know, 9 times out of 10, the people that kind of live in those communities are, not trying to put a stereotype on it, but they're in some form of addiction, you know?
Yeah.
And it's sad to say that, but it was true for my area. And it was just that cycle. And then, you know, that person that had some pain pills one day might just have some meth. And they introduce you to it and you're like, okay, I'll try it. So that was the next thing in line, was trying meth. But before a meth addiction even got real bad, I was introduced to Subutex and Suboxone and all that, like just to try to help with withdrawals. I was like, okay. And about this same time, you know, I was finding out I was pregnant with my son. So that's about 7-year difference between the time I had Raiden to the time I had my son. But like after that, like I only realized I could abuse those. It didn't take long to realize, like, hey, this might actually help you get off of drugs, but I can also melt them down in a spoon and stick them in my arm. I think my veins are pretty bad to this day because of that kind of thing. Like one of the last times I even had to go get some blood work done just for regular like vitamins and all that checkup. They had to go in like my ankles because all my veins from the drug use has been, like, I'm praying they come back, and I know they will one day, but they're just, and I think I relate it to shooting up Subutex and Suboxone. But yeah, so when I was pregnant with him, that's kind of what happened there. But afterwards, it just kept, like, the meth use kind of was there, but it wasn't a whole lot, you know. Snort a line and be up for a couple days, and then, you know, wouldn't mess with it for a while, and then, you know, back to it. But during the mix of all of that, like, it was always, mine and Charlie's relationship was always so rocky. I was always just trying to make sure we had that picture perfect family. And I think there were some wounds inside of, like, there was some cheating and stuff that went on. And I was just always trying to figure out what I did wrong. What can I do to make it better? And, like, in reality, I don't think there was a whole lot. We were just trying to, like, force two magnets together that probably maybe didn't need to be together, but I'm thankful for my kids that I got out of it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so that part was brutal. So we ended up going harder on the meth use. We went from smoking it to eventually shooting it up, and that was a big game changer for everybody that I ever know, really, to do that. It was, there was another side that stuff brought out. Like, smoking and snorting meth is one thing, I think, but once you inject it into your body and all those chemicals do whatever it does to your brain system, it's the same thing with my dad waking up and becoming two totally different people. And I don't, and like, just to put it out there like that, I don't never put all the blame on one person in this relationship. It takes two to tango, you know?
Yep.
But, like, Charlie became an extremely violent person. And at this point it was like, well, dang, I'm in there right with him, you know. It's like you don't want to leave him to hurt himself, and you don't want to continue to stay in it, so you're at this limbo thing. And I was always trying to do the right thing for my kids. Like, I thought I was doing the right thing, but I was just hurting them, you know. In the end, eventually lost homes, lost cars. My daughter would go stay with her aunt from, you know, Charlie's sister or my sister, and, you know, Wyatt would be living in the car with us at some points. You know, it was, there's things that went on that, you know, I'm thankful he probably doesn't remember as far as violent goes, but, like, it all relates back to the drug use. Like, it brings something, like, out of the dark that's not really who you are as a person. And we kind of lost everything from there. So eventually after sleeping in cars for probably months, there was a friend that took us in, but the hindsight of that is, yes, this person was a friend, but she was also the meth dealer. So it really didn't help, and again, no fault to that person. I think a lot of people probably felt sorry for the kids involved and was like, these two people are out here, just can't get it together. But it was this substance that all was bringing us all together. I think we all having these addictions and kind of pointing the blame back to other people. We're like, oh my gosh, but really it's just this one thing that if it wasn't there, these people wouldn't be like that, But it's the power of addiction. So after living with this person for a while, like stuff just kept getting more out of hand, more violent. Like I don't know what my life would have been like really, but so what another night had popped up, and this is just like this reoccurring theme that I used to think back on about, like why is it? What is it about me? Me and Charlie got into an argument. Like things were done and said, like we were outside and we were arguing, and he had went to walk off a porch, and like when he went to walk off, I kind of flinched a little bit, and some of it, like he was like, "What are you that afraid of me? You can't really, like I can't walk by you like that." And I was like, I don't know what this is going to consist of. I don't know if this is just going to be a verbal yelling match for like 4 or 5 hours, because that's just what meth addicts like to do. They're just so frantic and stuff. You don't know what you're arguing about. You're just arguing. Or is this going to be a pretty scary situation where I'm going to be locked into a room for a couple of days and not allowed to come out? Or there were times where it was pretty violent inside of that room and I wasn't allowed to make noises, or I would get hit harder. And again, that's not who he was as a person. I know that. I know that within my utmost being, But it's just a part of the story, and that what that drug had done and took a toll on us. So I ended up like walking past him and going back inside to be with my son at the time, who was sleeping, thankfully. And this was another night that like would change our family forever, So like without going into like all the detail and the craziness of it, ultimately Charlie had went outside and committed suicide. And I had made promises to my kids when they were born or growing up. I was like, they're not going to have that. They're not going to have what I had. I was trying to be different, And I think the only piece that I was trying to hold on for them was that their mom and dad were together. But it was so toxic. Like I couldn't even see through it enough to realize how bad it was until it was way beyond too late. Like, I've heard some people ask somebody, other, recovering addicts, what was your rock bottom? And I can't pick just one. Right. Like there were so many throughout
like
the
you
years.
Stayed on the bottom.
Yeah, for a long time.
Yeah.
Without realizing, but Charlie had committed suicide that night, and after that, I would love to be able to be like, I was starting to get it together, like I'm gonna start getting my crap together for my kids, but it wasn't it. If anything, I turned to what I knew, what I knew how to do, and that was just to use more drugs and put myself in some pretty sketchy and violent situations. Like, it's just not hanging around the greatest of people with the greatest intentions, for sure. Luckily, I had met a family shortly after Charlie had passed that, it turned into a relationship, but like, I think God sent those people to me without realizing it, now, because this person just tried to help me and tried to do what, like, he even tried to get us to go into church and all this, and I think that was God planning, using them to plant some seeds. But like, it didn't get better. I just seen a kind person with a kind heart, and I ended up running through them. I had put the shoe on the other foot, so to speak, like with Charlie. Like I had reversed those roles and was like putting that off on another person, so to speak. But we had used substances together, me and this person, and he didn't like that I'd done meth, but he didn't like we used it together. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it just wasn't as often, and he definitely didn't know about me shooting it up. I used to hide syringes in the weirdest of places, whether it was in AC units in the house or like behind pictures, in cars and vents, like just random places. But like he tried, he tried, but eventually during this time frame in my life, like this is just a few months after Charlie had passed, I was introduced to Xanax bars, and like I thought that was the cure all fix, because here I am high as a kite up for 3 days, got Xanaxes to come down. Like I don't think my body knew what to do, but it was just mixing, and I was like, okay, I can manage this. I'm kind of striding through life all right now. We're going to church on Sundays. I've got a little job at a gas station that didn't last long, but like, had a car. Things was going okay, but it really wasn't. Like it was so far from okay. Like it wasn't, and I'm thankful now that God placed me inside of a household that they started kind of seeing stuff, and God was giving them the guidance to ultimately probably give me like a spiritual wake-up call sooner rather than later. The relationship with that person lasted about 3 years before that family was like, no more, Wow. But inside of that, like with that, I had a wreck going to the Xanax bar dealer's house. And at this time, fentanyl was coming out and coming around, but I didn't never really openly do like fentanyl, like knowing about it. I always thought it was something else, like people were calling it other things, or it was pressed inside of Xanax bars. So using meth and those two substances, it was just a something bad was gonna happen. And I had a few wrecks. The first wreck I ever had, I was coming around the curve going to the Xanax dealer's house, and of course I was probably not going the speed limit, hit some rocks and flipped my car over. We had a gun in the car, probably like an ounce of weed. There was Xanaxes and a little bit of meth, but you get caught with a little bit of meth and that's a felony charge. So we were panicking, like it was this whole scenario, and God protected us on that one. We all walked away. Nobody hurt. Was able to flip the van back over on its side and drive it off. Like, wow. I think we drove it off. Let me rephrase that, because I don't want to. I think we did drive it off. I think we saved that van. I can't remember. The next one.
You could have rolled it off.
Yeah.
Rolled it down the
it's road. Like it gets fuzzy going that far back. But the next one, we did not drive off. The next one, it was the same scenario, and thankfully my kids were at school. I had, honestly, if I'm going to be real at all this, I was inside of Kohl's this morning stealing a bunch of stuff, shirts, just randomness that when you get high on Xanax, you go in and steal. So get a call. Like we used to buy them like 60 at a time, 20 at a time. And I know we were running low, so we had called the dealer up and was needing to get some more. And a friend of mine was like, well, just go by their house. And they lived out in Cleveland somewhere. This is just a country part of the area that I'd lived in at the time, but I don't know those roads that well. So I was already high on Xanaxes, going to get more. And we get there, we don't get no answer, so we end up leaving, but I decided to drive on the way back. And I think from the time we left that person's house to the scene of the accident was probably 3 to 5 minutes down the road. And for a long time I blamed it on the weather. I said it was raining in a hydroplane, but it wasn't true. I don't know why cops and paramedics didn't see it, and I think that's another God's blessing there.
Yeah.
But I ran off a ditch ran down the side of an embankment, hit a telephone pole, smashed into a boulder. I had broke my arm in two places, my orbital socket in my face, my nose was busted open. I had smashed my foot to where it was a Liz Frank fracture, like smashed up. My fiance at the time, his femur was broke, fractured his wrist, like it was pretty severe. They had to cut us out of the truck, like.
Wow.
Like I'm thankful to be here. I'm thankful that I can even walk around. Or there's times like I'll be at the altar praising Jesus, and I'm just thankful that I can walk to do that because, like, by the looks of the vehicle, I shouldn't have even walked away from that vehicle. I spent a long time trying to heal and recover, only to be so sick of my addiction that I was snorting pills in the hospital with a broke nose and a cast and stitches. Like I got stitches that go all the way down to like the tip of my nose. Still trying to snort the pain meds and being so addicted. Like the pain meds that they weren't giving me weren't strong enough, but I didn't want to tell them that I needed. Like it was this whole sick cycle. Wanted people to come bring me stuff up there, but it's in Winston-Salem, so it was like nobody was gonna do that. Like you're crazy. Then once we got home, it was the same thing. Having people come by, dropping them off, and getting high while you're in a walker and trying to crush around the house. It's not a good idea. I laugh about it now, but it only removes stuff so badly, like the blinders I had on my eyes, for other people to see it. The family that I was living with, they weren't dumb, they weren't dumb at all, and they started seeing this pattern. They're like, dude, there's they need some help, but still didn't listen. We ended up getting a little trailer and another car out of the settlement money because where I was driving, the passenger was able to get like $50,000 off my insurance, or however that worked, because he was a passenger in the car or whatever. So we bought a little trailer and we ended up with a car that I had for 5 hours. Like 5 hours. The same scenario going down the road. Raiden and Wyatt were with me at this time, and I'm just driving down the road and I nod out and my daughter yells at me to get my attention back, and I yanked the car, flipped it again. And it always flipped on its side. It was never a full flip. It was always, I'm thankful to be here to be able to laugh about it. I really am. And again, we was able to walk away. I didn't get arrested I should have been. By all means, I should have been. But I know God had his hands on me. He was waiting. And I think that was the straw that broke everybody's back. Yeah. They're like, oh no. It wasn't long after this until I was served with papers from my fiance's mom at that time. I got served some custody papers, taking custody of my daughter and my son and giving them to my sister. And again, I like to say that was the wake-up call, but it wouldn't. It was probably 2 years from that point, or a year and a half from that point, that I actually went and got some help, but a lot more other crap happens in between that, so we go to a little... my fiance at the time goes to a treatment center. I go to one for 30 days, thought I was cured, fixed, and everything. And in the meantime, the family is separating us. Which, looking back now, I totally agree with. I understand. Right. But in the moment, I was like, I'm going back home. We're going to be together. We're going to do this thing together. But no, it's best to end it that way. And, I went through hurt of a breakup and all the silliness that comes with that, but then I was out there on my own finally. There come a time where my sister quit letting me speak to my kids, and my kids didn't want nothing to do with me, and especially my oldest daughter. Right. She had been at her wit's end, and I cannot blame her. So I think that's when it started sinking in.
She's wise beyond her years.
She is.
I remember you saying, her saying that, straighten up and then you can talk to me.
Yep.
That's so crazy for a kid to say. A kid said that. Yeah.
Yeah, she that girl has been through a lot from the time her whole life, you know. She hadn't had a good example as a mom, but and that's one thing I still struggle with is like, 'cause you can't take back time. You can't buy. I don't care if you're, you know, Elon Musk. You can't buy time. Like you can't. The only thing I can do is be better going forward. But what strain I had put on my kids, you know. But you know, she lost her dad at 9, and she lost her mom too, pretty much. You know, she didn't know what that looked like, you know, just like I didn't. But I think I did something a little bit harsher to my kids that I need to. The phrase would be to make up for, but the only thing you can do is be present, be different.
Yep.
Yeah. But after I'd went to this short treatment stay that I thought I was fixed, that, like I said, that family stepped in, made us separate for reasons of the 12 steps. Now that I look back and see, like,
yeah,
especially Celebrate Recovery 12 steps, if you're not married to that person, you need to part ways, and you need to work on your 12 steps, no dating for a year. It all clicked later, but I think that's what his mom was trying to do, was she was just trying to A, save her son, and B, not cause no more heartache for 2 kids that she knew that already went through some heartache. But anyways, after that, I was on my own fully for the first time since Charlie's passing or my dad's passing, because I never really walked through life being my own person. You know, I was always Charlie's old lady, or, you know, I was with Ethan or whoever it may have been. But
well, that had to be miserable to reflect. I hate that word sometimes, but
yeah,
to be all by yourself and no one around, just the thoughts that go through your head has to be just disturbing and miserable. And
it was,
because at this time your sister still had your kids.
Yeah, she had my kids full time. Was loving on them when I didn't even know how to love myself. You know, she
in
got
the
them to
30-day
school.
program, when you got out, did you start using again?
Yeah, I was smoking weed on the way home. I was back into it, and back at a meth dealer's house within 2 weeks of it. You know, I did the whole trying to look the part of it, but no. And then I think not having that, being grounded, like having a house to come home to, it was just wild. I've been at so many kind of sketchy trap houses that, like, I'm surprised I even lived coming out of. Even when their dad was alive, we lived at trap houses that had wolf rats, like huge, where they were like shooting them in the middle of the night with these BB guns. Like the places I lived, it's just it is what it is. But like, it wasn't safe, and I'm thankful to be where I'm at. But the year coming up to where I had actually went and tried to get myself some help, like, I was all but living. You know, I call myself, or I went through a homeless stage, but it wasn't roughing it out in the woods like there are some people out there struggling. I was pretty much couch surfing from, next dope house to another dope house to this house, like, to where I burnt so many bridges. Like, Xanaxes do you one way anyways, but like, I had stole so much stuff from people that I wouldn't even remember stealing from, that people were mad at me for stealing stuff I couldn't even remember stealing. Like, it was terrible. I almost got arrested for stealing Klondike bars from the Dollar General. I was out of my mind, and they called on that. It was something else. Like, those things make you a different person, But the last time I got arrested, it involved some stealing some stuff, and having some paraphernalia and drugs on me, and I had went for 30 days, and my mom and sister and everybody's like, no, we're not coming to get you out. And I was like, well, I got $300 in my bank account. Like, why can't you get? They're like, no, I don't care if you had thousands in your bank account. We're not coming to get you. Well, of course, I got in touch with a drug dealer. They went and paid my bond and paid them back and all that. Like, so I got out, but it was just becoming worse. And then another night in Xanax is involved. Like, I ended up voice texting because I was so high you can't text. like I can't even see the phone, just looking back or whatever. So I was voice texting somebody that was around my daughter at that time, and like the person texted, hey, this is your daughter. I don't want nothing to do with you right now. You go get yourself some help. It's like, nah, this ain't my daughter. And then they called, and I heard it, and it was at that point where like that hole finally got ripped out. It took me probably another month or so, but I had reached out to somebody that I met at the first rehab that I had went through, and told me about this place for women. And I was like, man, I don't know, like, what do I got to do? They were like, man, you just need some church clothes. You just need some comfy clothes, and you need some work clothes. So I was like, oh, okay. Like, told me it's free. All this is at the beach, and I was like, what? I'll be on the beach. I thought I was gonna be on the beach,
right?
Okay, but that's
how they get you out there.
It's another thing.
It's a beachfront condo.
Yeah, I was thinking like in my head about this, and they're like, well, you got to call every day to be on this waiting list. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I need it now. I don't have somewhere to stay and wait and call, like, let alone having a phone or Wi-Fi service to call somebody. But it ended up I did, but it was at another drug dealer's house to sit and wait,
wow.
So the cycle was going nowhere fast. I felt hopeless. I really did. I felt like, all right, I'm at this point now, okay, like, A, I know I need to do something, or I'm going to end up killing myself by accident. Like, I'm going to end up, because I had already had a seizure, I had 3 seizures in one day, and was admitted to the hospital for, I guess, they said it was because of the stopping of Xanax use, but I wasn't putting it all together.
Wow.
So like I realized all this needed to happen. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna give this a try. And so, like, my mom and my dad's sister, one of my aunts, had finally, I guess, talked to each other on the phone and was like, we need to get her out of Rowan County so she can have a fair shot at this. And my aunt agreed to let me stay until the bed date become available for me to go to the Rose House in Whiteville. I was terrified to go. I remember Googling the pictures of what it looked like, and it looked like this little, like, in my mind, it looked like a little, the way the house is set up, it looks like a little, all I could think of was like the Snow White and Seven Dwarfs kind of cottage sitting in there. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I call and finally get a bed date, and I go in there, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, how many people live here? And they're like 6. I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't been around that many women in one setting in a long time, So, like, that started my recovery journey, but I was, compared to what it is now, like, having 20 some women
sitting, 26.
I'd have been terrified. but, it was an awesome experience. It wasn't easy, but when I went through there, I was like, all right, this has to work, because nothing else has worked. Like, I have no option B. The whole plan B, if this doesn't work, I'm going to this. There was none of that for me. This was life or death. Sometimes when I'm talking with the other women and I'm sharing my story with them, I tell them, like, I had to put in my spiritual 4-wheel drive after I knew I had the 4-wheel drive.
Yep.
I had to discover that before I could use it. But, like, I started learning more. And I was like, man, this stuff that I want for my family is going to be 5 years from now. Like, this isn't happening anytime soon. Like, my daughter's, I don't want to say hated me, but she's probably pretty close.
Yeah.
Family washed my hands. My mom was supportive and prayed and stuff. But, I got a phone call from my sister one day, and she was like, hey, we didn't think you'd ever do it. They didn't think you'd ever get clean. And I was like, what do you think? What do you think I've been doing? Like, I've been working on myself for a while. Like, but that's another part of the story. But, so yeah, fast forward, and I stayed, and I graduated. And
now you work for...
now I work for her. I am.
You're actually the boss of a bunch of other...
I am
recovering
depleted
addicts, and also, outsiders.
Yep, I'm depleted superintendent for them. So I have literally went through the program, worked on the team, and kind of worked my way up. And I want those involved, on the men and women's side to see that. Like,
and you have both your kids now.
Yeah, yep. I just recently got both my kids back. And that was a struggle in itself. So I wasn't trying to hurt my sister, like I said, she loved on them when I couldn't. So when it come time for me to be like, I think, I've saved up money and because everything went through the courts, so we kind of had to go back through the court system to get custody back over. It was still a shift, my sister took care of them for 4 years, and I'm sure she has her own, heartbreak and missing them and stuff. So I try to make sure she's connected with them still. But it was time I had my babies back, and I needed to show. I feel like as addicts, we don't have to show we don't have to prove anything to people, but we kind of do.
You do, yeah.
We kind of do, and like I wanted to show, especially my son. He's a mama's boy, and my daughter was a daddy's girl,
right?
But I want him to have a healthy, happy home, and I think I can give that to him now.
Yeah.
So that's the cool thing about it. But I had to use or learn a lot of tools throughout the way and learn about myself, and like having to fully surrender every single day, and not just what I wanted to surrender to the Lord. Like I have to fully surrender my entire life, my family, my children, every part of it over. And looking back, like I can see where God had his hand over so many things in my life where I should be dead or shouldn't be inside of a jail cell or whatever the case may be, to finally getting to the point of the beginning of this year. At Christmas I got the best Christmas present I could ask for. I just didn't fully open it till January. Like I have both my kids back under one roof. My mom was with me. Like
that's awesome.
And I'm trying to teach them more and more about Christ.
And you have your own car that you haven't been in
I
accident
do.
5 hours after you purchased it.
I've had it for going on 2.5 years now. I have
That's
not
the
had
longest
a
you've owned a car, right?
It is.
Okay, good.
Yep, and it's the first time I've had this new of a car in my name.
Right.
Yeah. And I can say that proudly too. It's something silly, but all the bills I have, as far as rent, even down to phone bills, car payment stuff, I haven't been late. I've been able to make ends meet and provide a life for my kids.
You're getting your credit back.
Yeah, amen.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. I mean, especially the one word that like comes to my mind is hope. And like after all that stuff that's happened to you, I mean, I couldn't imagine having my dad commit suicide, my baby's dad commit suicide, and you're still living to tell a story.
Yeah. I think it comes down to, like, they have a story too that needs to be told, and maybe one day I can try to put that together in a way to where like I feel like people that are hurting to that point, like there's a deeper thing that they didn't get to tell, and if I can carry that torch for those two that I've had in my life that felt like that was their only way out, I need to try to carry that torch for other people. And that's why I want to, I'm in school now for certified drug and alcohol counseling, but I want to go further with it. There's addiction isn't just about picking up a substance and using it. It's the mental that goes along with it, and it changes so much in your brain. Like there's just so much that you can learn and to reach back and help somebody else that was in the same spot I'm in. That's just where my heart's at now, to continue to try to help somebody else.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you for letting me share it.